Hi, I'm Gayla. After 20 years of climbing the corporate ladder, I took the leap and started my own business to pursue my dream of creating a work-from-anywhere lifestyle. Having the freedom to work from practically anywhere is such a cool feeling. You're in the right place if you're looking for ideas and inspiration to start and grow your own online business. Every week in this podcast, you'll receive practical ideas, hints, tips, and tricks to help you grow your online business where you can leverage your time and you can accomplish more. You too can experience wonderful adventure and freedom as you live life on your own terms. Hi there and welcome to the show. Joining me today is Linda Guild. Linda is an association executive with over 20 years of experience. She believes in the power of connections. Working with different associations has enabled her to learn about many industries. She's bringing the knowledge of associations to the Talented Alliance of Part-Time Professionals, aka TAPP. She believes that those who work part-time and their companies deserve to have the resources which fit their situation so that the individual feels valued. Now, the Scrivener Solutions team is comprised of primarily part-time employees, and there's a lot of advantages for both the employee and the company to have the flexibility that part-time employment offers. But for as many advantages there are just as many challenges to overcome. And when it comes to resources available to help make the part-time employment relationship better and stronger, those resources are few and far between. That's why I'm so delighted that Linda has joined me for today's show. And we had a lovely conversation about the empty space that TAPP is filling. It's not just a matter of companies knowing how to best utilize the skills of their part-time employees, but it's also a fantastic resource for individuals who want or who are part-time employees. However small your business is, if it's just a business of you, you're going to be building a team. And so much of the time you start with somebody doing not full-time work, but just a little bit to get you over that hump. So you're going to have some part-time employment opportunities. Whether you're freelancing and it's client relations, you're working with a client as a freelancer on a part-time basis, or you're building your company to where you're bringing on part-time employees. This is a conversation that is super helpful. So let's get right into the interview, shall we? Welcome, Linda. I'm so glad you're here on the show today.
Thanks, Gail. I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, before we get started too far into the conversation, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. My name is Linda Guild, and I am the current CEO for a company called the Guild Associates. We're an association management company in the Boston area, and I'm third generation. And I'm also the founder and CEO of a new organization, or relatively new organization, called the Talented Alliance of Part-Time Professionals. I normally just call it TAPP, and it's modeled after associations because that's what I know best.
So did you start TAPP? Is that your business?
That is my business. So we started it under the umbrella of the Guild Associates. Who's ever on my team here will work also on TAPP as well as our other associations. And we saw a need for an organization geared towards part-time. It came about with friends. I had friends that were stay-at-home moms, and they were college educated. Some were teachers, some were engineers, and in different areas. And they wanted to do something else. They loved taking care of their kids, but they wanted to do something else. And I brought them in for projects, and they all said to me, like, my friends want something similar. And then I realized companies didn't know how to hire part-time. And so I started to look around and said, there's no association for part-time. Why not? So we sat down and started brainstorming and came up with the concept, and have been chipping away and trying to figure out, how to get it out there in the world. Because I didn't follow anyone's path of saying, oh, find something that other people do. No, I decided to start something brand new and try and be a trailblazer with it. But
through TAPP, how do you help part-time workers?
so we have two different forks, I guess I'll call it for the moment. One is geared at the companies. With the companies, what we want to do, and we're working with them, is create professional development and other resources for the companies. Because if you have a part-time staff member, they're there for a limited amount of time. Saying, oh, we want you to do a professional development course for a day isn't always realistic for a part-time staff member. So we want to give them bite-sized professional development, especially on social skills like communication, leadership, team building, so that they're on the same page with the rest of their staff. And what we've done that's unique is we've created something that's for the individual. So the part-timers, as well as anyone else on their team, has stuff that they learn. And then materials for the managers, so that the manager gets the same material as the individual, obviously, but there's something specifically for the manager to work through. So it's not just, hey, watch this video, but there's an interactive piece for the team as a whole, led by the manager, to learn more. And then we've done things for companies such as, how do you hire part-time?
Yes.
How do you even decide what to do? Talking to someone recently, and he said, I need to hire someone part-time, and they're going to do, and he listed like 10 things. And I went, how's that going to, to myself, how's that going to work? Because if you don't know what you need someone to do or how long something takes, you're setting people up for disaster, I feel. Helping someone to understand that, I think, is really important. And then for the individual, what we're doing and the process of doing is creating more the resources for them. How do you find a part-time job? How do you decide what type of job do you want? There are people, I think, that are at the stage in their lives that they don't want any responsibility. They want to go home at night, and they're looking for, they might choose to do retail because they want that community. They want to interact with people. But there may be other people that say, I want to maintain my professional credentials and I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm an engineer and I need X, Y, and Z. So helping people understand what do they want, again, before you find the job. And then long-term, what we're looking to do is to have them have resources of other people that are in the same kind of stage that they're in. So if when you were raising your daughter, if you wanted to connect with other moms that were working part-time, you might not agree on different areas, but that it's different if you're a working mom than a stay-at-home mom. And then the part-time is in a different world. Same with if you're retiring or you're a caregiver for a parent or someone that's sick. Everyone's kind of on different journeys, and finding people that are like you. So that's part of our long-term goal, is helping people to create that community. Ask one another what's working. This came up at work. How do I handle it without it being, we're not HR, we're staying away from that. So,
So you primarily help the companies and the part-time individuals.
Yep.
Do you find it difficult to find companies that embrace the part-time concept, or is it pretty easy?
It's a little challenging to figure out, what companies and where they are on the spectrum. I think that most companies want to do the right thing, but it's figuring out how to reach them and get them on board, because you want people that are going to invest in it and buy into what you're doing. And I don't believe that good professional development or any of these programs really work if it's not bought into by the leadership.
Right.
And so we're still working on some of that piece of it. We're really kind of in outreach mode and having conversations, but we definitely see that there's an interest in it, and that, some companies are struggling with this themselves. And some of it's a cost measure. It's a lot of professional development gets to be very pricey. That, a lot of the platforms, for example, do it on a per head basis. And you look at it and you go, well, again, how many hours is this person here? Does this make sense? We're reframing it and saying you're valuing the person and bringing them forward instead of looking at the cost first. I think you always have to separate that out.
Well, sometimes, and maybe my perception's outdated, it may be, but sometimes when you're a part-time person thrown into a full-time office, you feel kind of like an outsider and not a part of the group. Maybe there's not as much being included
Mhm.
in everything. And I think that would be a challenge with both parties, but with the company, to make sure, how can we include these valuable part-time employees because they are contributing, and then their focus may not be so broad. But if you hire individuals that have laser focus
Mhm.
on a part-time basis, instead of maybe one or two full-time people that have just general type of skills, I would think that your productivity would just skyrocket.
I agree, and I think you've hit the nail on the head of creating an environment that they're included.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be very intentional of how is that communication going to happen. So if you have someone that's in 20 hours a week, and whether they have a set schedule, like I had one woman work for me for 5 years, 20 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And she would give me her schedule every 2 weeks. So it varied every 2 weeks, and we posted it so that I had an idea of when she was due. She was really good about making sure I was up to date when she left, or whoever she was doing work with. And that's such a key piece, because she understood there may be something that happens between when she leaves. If she's leaving at 2 o'clock on Tuesday and coming in at 10 o'clock on Thursday, someone might need to see some of what she was working on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not someone micromanaging her or any of that. It's just things can happen, especially in depending on how an office is structured. So I think having that communication, number one, and I think you hit the other pieces. We hire people that don't know how to do certain things and say, oh, they'll learn, but they never become quite good at it, or they don't really like it. The same person, young woman that worked for me, she worked for me full-time, left, came back and worked for me part-time. When she first started, she was doing accounting for me, but I had her try designing a flyer. Nope.
No,
Like everything was like up the top.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I was like, okay, that's not one of her things. And
Mm-hmm.
I had someone else that could do it, thankfully. But sometimes I think we try and push someone, it's great to try them out and expand their horizons and see what people like. But I think if they're really enjoying it, that works for them, right? And as you
Mm-hmm.
said, they're more productive and they're going to be better at it.
Yeah. Well, I remember years ago when my daughter, gosh, this had to be in like 26 years ago. My daughter was very small. I took on a job. I wanted to be home with her, but I also wanted to like have adult time. So
Yep.
that's what working moms want. We're educated and we want to have some separation there. And that was way before any remote working or anything like that. You couldn't work from home. We just didn't have the technology like we do now. I took a job at a nursing home in their front office, their billing office.
Okay.
I took the place. It was temporary. It was supposed to be temporary, so I took it full time because I was taking on a maternity leave, 5 days a week for 6 weeks, 6, 8 weeks. What happened was the lady that went on maternity leave never came back. What I did, I was in my early 20s, and my role there at the nursing home was the business office. It was the billing part of it, billing the insurances and all of that. I knew, because my husband was in the military, I knew that, gosh, he was going to be getting out like a year and a half from that point. I knew there was an end. So I negotiated with that nursing home administrator. I said, you need to find another business office manager. I would like part-time. Your accounts receivable are terrible. How about I work full-time? You get a new business office manager in here. And since the aged receivables are so bad, you want to get that new manager on the right foot. She can't do current stuff and then clean up the bad all on her shoulders. And I was able to negotiate with them that they brought on a new manager. I was there till they brought this person on. And then I dropped down to 2 days a week and just focused on their old age receivables, had a very small per hour and a percentage of collections.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting way to do it. Good for you.
And so I could do that, and it was easy to track, because for nursing homes, you bill by the month type thing. And if something, and you can pretty much tell, okay, if this was billable charges prior to such and such date. I mean, there was clear line in the sand on that. I made some really great revenue. They recouped money that they thought they'd never see, years old, when they thought, hey, it's just a write-off. And the office administrator or the office manager was able to succeed and concentrate on good procedures for future. I think, listening to you talking about part-time, even if a professional is full-time right now, that learning skills to negotiate and learning the skills to communicate, because maybe you can transition into part-time. Or I also can see a need in the military spousal type market, because there's so many skilled individuals in the military spouse ring. And when they have to move so much, some employers are apprehensive to hire them. But if they can hire for the skill for part-time, I think that, and the military spouses would have a network like TAPP to learn how to be a valued part-time employee.
I think that's an awesome idea. I love that. And I think, you found the niche that you wanted that worked for you. And I love the fact that you negotiated. That's one of the, we actually have created some materials of, hey, you're going on maternity leave or you're going to be out, here's ways to negotiate to go part-time. And I understand not all companies will do it.
Right.
And for different reasons. But a lot of times, just refilling that position is so hard. But you could also do a job share. That's another way to do something. So you have the equivalent of full-time, but those two people get what they want of sharing a position, right?
So how does job share work?
So job share can work different ways, but so say the business manager that you talked about came back from maternity leave. But she didn't want to be full-time and you didn't want to be full-time. You'd negotiate what hours you both might work 2.5 days a week or the equivalent with a little bit of overlap, and set up really good communication between you of what got done when the other person wasn't in.
Yeah.
And so you're doing the same position, but you're splitting the workload. And every company would be different in how it works. And some people, they need a receptionist to answer the phone, or you might do the accounts payable and accounts receivable. There's overlap there, especially if it's not old.
Right.
So one's doing one and one's doing the other, but they're covering, hey, someone called you back on this. Someone's still here to have that conversation because I've left you good notes and I can look at it.
And I think you have to, as a business owner, you have to create that atmosphere. Because I have worked in offices where some coworkers are very possessive of
I've worked in one of those.
information that they have. And it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. I think that, that everybody, the more that everybody knows, or, that we can serve our customers, clients, patients, whatever industry we're in.
And I think it's so true regardless of what type of business you're in. So whether you're in an office environment or in retail, that communication path is so key to make sure everyone's on the same page, because you have a handoff. Like they talk about that in the hospitals, of the handoff between nursing staffs, right? You see that in retail of, if you have a part-time, and we'll pick on Starbucks for a second, and they have a new Frappuccino out. Well, if you weren't in the first 2 days, you might have heard about it anecdotally, but you don't know anything about it. So they have to come up with really good systems to integrate. And in the business, if I'm running a meeting and it's closed, it's full, I have to make sure my staff knows that. And so when you have part-time, you have to be that much more intentional about setting up the communication. And to your point earlier, I think of that, not making that person feel like an outcast, and being intentional of, don't have your staff meetings on the only day they're not in, and then they're always being caught up if you only have one or two. Who's shepherding them? They can be senior too. I think we named it with the word professional because I feel like anyone can be a professional. If you have someone that's bagging your groceries,
yes,
they can be a professional, or they can be the person that you're like, those were eggs.
Yeah.
They didn't go underneath underneath the heavy jars. Right?
The frozen turkey.
The frozen turkey, exactly. But you can also see that CEO, and we've all met people or seen people that don't seem professional.
Mm-hmm.
They have the title.
Right.
So to me, a professional is an attitude. And by elevating and saying to people, just because the person works reduced hours, they are a valuable member of your staff. They can be professional. Investing in them is huge. I had a young woman working for me during COVID. She was a senior in high school and came in over March break and never went back to school.
Mm-hmm.
She started college this fall, but her two siblings, she has a younger brother and an older sister. They worked at two grocery stores. And she said at dinner one night, they were arguing about which grocery store was better. And I thought, how amazing. Like, if we can have people and look at our part-time, not just our full-time, to become those raving fans, right? Whether those kids ever work in another grocery store or not, the fact that they wanted to argue about which one was better is awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to want their friends to go to theirs and talk about the good things. So how do you get the people to come out of your environment because you've invested in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a part-time, because some people, you left the nursing home for whatever the reason was. It sounds like you probably got transferred.
Yep.
But you might have left for other reasons down the road. People,
Mm-hmm.
and leaving's not bad, but if you've had a good experience.
What if your part-time turns into, because all of our seasons of life, I mean, we change. Our
Yep.
kids grow up, maybe we want more hours.
Mm-hmm.
What if we want a promotion and we need to put in more hours? Or we put in for a promotion that require full-time type
Right.
thing? Or what if we're at an older stage of our life and we need to take care of our aging parents,
Mm-hmm.
and want something different and not retire? I think having the hours that our employees need and can work and be really productive is, and having them happy
Mm-hmm.
makes for a wildly productive company. But it takes the leadership to make the right atmosphere and implement the right processes. I've heard you say more than once, communication. That's a big
Yep.
deal.
It's
How
a
do you
huge.
talk to and be inclusive and everything? And I know that TAPP offers an online communication course.
We do. We have a mini course on communication. It's focused on personality types
Oh.
and how to talk to someone, so you have someone that's assertive or aggressive or passive aggressive, and passive can be really tough, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the person that goes along with anything, but can sometimes feel not included because you have to draw them out, right?
Yes.
So what we've done is our course, and we've built it in like a bite size. So each module takes 5 to 7 minutes. There's a video, or if you like to read like I do, you can just read it, and as well as a workbook that goes along. We ask questions for you to think about, and we've given tips on how to communicate with different styles. So you learn about the styles, and then you learn how to communicate and to think through, who do you communicate well with? What style are they? What worked? An office environment, we have a manager's part for it if people were interested, that the manager, we're giving them tips of how to implement this. So things like if you were in a retail setting and someone had a difficult customer,
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? But how to talk it through so that you're learning from it, and what could you do differently? What language could you use? And I think what's good about any of this type of thing, whether it's our course or someone else's, I mean, there's a lot of people that have different types of courses, is it gets everyone on the same page. If you're using the same language, it makes a difference. I talked about Starbucks earlier, but if you walk into a Starbucks and say, I want a medium, half the time they'll lift something and say, which one do you want? It's language. So we have the mini course. We have a free version for people to try out, which I think I sent you a link for the show notes, and people can try it out. But that's part of what we offer is for companies and individuals, is to have a monthly mini course that they could sign up and do. The long-term one is a subscription, but this first one is free to see how it would work and to implement. So
in the show notes, there'll be a link to this communications mini course. But then when they sign up for this mini course, will they hear back from you to know when the next ones are? Is there a community of part-time workforce so that we can talk amongst ourselves, I guess, with our stories?
We do. Yep. We have some Facebook groups online, and then we've been doing TAPP tips. So we will be in touch with them, let them know what we're doing, and giving them some tips of things that they can use personally and professionally. One of the things that we've tried to do is have some of this be information that you want to learn. Because you say, oh, this isn't just for work. I can use this over here and connect it to your real life, which is not really a statement I use much. But I think when you feel like it's only for a specific scenario, you're not as excited about it. But if you realize, oh, I could use this with my husband, or I could use this with my cousin.
With the communications, especially, my mother and I tease that all the management and all the DISC assessments and all of this stuff not only helped us in our management career through that, but it also helped in understanding and communicating within our families, so, managing our household, and it was amazing.
And some of this can be fun because I think as you go along, you start to share with other people what you are, so whether we recommend to people some of the DISC or an Enneagram, or I've done stuff with some speakers who talk about like birth order and how you communicate based on that. And I did that with one of my associations, and they walked around the entire weekend saying, well, I do this because I'm the oldest, or I do this because.
That is awesome.
And I think just understand, and again, I think the more people understand about themselves. I heard something, and it may have been on your show, and if it was, I listened to enough podcasts that they run together of what great tip, but it's don't treat someone as you'd like to be treated, but treat them as they want to be treated. And I have said that to other people, and I think the more you understand the differences between people and how to maneuver between them, that becomes less scary, right?
Yeah.
And you're better able to figure out what that person would like.
Having an understanding of others and the differences. And it all boils down to communication. It just really does. And it's up to us as individuals to become better communicators. And I think that it's very valuable of you providing this source for part-time employees, being a resource for a part-time employee instead of being told what to do, really showing value and learning to communicate. Like you said before, it's really important to communicate, especially if you're job sharing. But you gave that example of your part-time employee that went above and beyond to let you know when she's in and out and what she's accomplished, so that when she's not there, you at least know where to pick up if something happened.
And she took a lot of initiative, and I didn't realize how important this was until, I've had some other people and realized what she brought to the table that someone else and me as the boss in particular needed to do. Is she would walk in and say, okay, what's new? What a simple question, right? But understanding that we have a lot of things in the air as the management company, knowing like part of her responsibility, or she saw as responsibility, is fill me in. What did I miss? Instead of, oh, no one talked to me. No one told me anything.
Oh my gosh. You said the right word, initiative. Learning to take the initiative. And sometimes that takes a little bit of training and confidence. Did COVID change any perceptions in some of the employers that you work with?
I think that the biggest perception change that we're seeing overall is the remote. Right? Because before, no matter what, you kind of had to be at a certain level, or you had to have the tenure. And now companies are onboarding people remotely. Companies, and I'm in the Boston area. It's amazing how many companies in downtown Boston haven't opened.
Really?
And they're all remote. And the big high rises in particular. And so I think they have negotiated that. Now, what I'm going to be curious to see long term is have they made the right connections? Have they been good about staying connected to all their different employees? That, the stuff that happens around the water cooler that doesn't happen, have they managed it? I know for me personally, one of my struggles when we were all remote is I don't know when the person is knee deep in something. So
Right.
it's like, I have a dumb idea, or I just want to okay, I need to work on this, or, want to brainstorm for this podcast. Do you have a minute? Calling them or texting them feels very different than poking my head. Oh, clearly that person head is down. I'll move on. And so that's the part that for me was hard to figure out. So I think it's going to be interesting I think it's going to make it easier for the parent that wants to work from home. I think she's going to, especially women, because it is more women than men, but men, I think they're going to find more sympathy long-term because so many people have been home with their kids.
All my employees are part-time. One in particular has 3 young ones. One was in preschool and one was in elementary, and then one's a toddler. But when school shut down, she's like, holy cow. And now that school has started, they have like a hybrid method that she's got to get these kids in front of the computer at certain times. And she's like, I'm kind of freaked out about my work schedule a little bit. I mean, our work schedule is pretty flexible, but I can only imagine if she worked for a company that she needed to be online at solid breaks of time.
Yep.
That overlap with her kids, because I know that's the struggle.
Yep.
And employers kind of breaking away and saying, hey, I need this much productivity out of you, but if you could take the initiative to break it up to where it fits with your family, or do you lose your job because you've got kids at home?
And I think it's creating that balance and understanding what needs to happen when, if you're doing certain things, like we had a call today that started at 11:30 and went to 1:30 with 100 people on it. Now, I can't say if I had kids at home, well, my kids are online and, well, there needs to be coverage somehow.
Right.
But I think that, to your point, it's the initiative. It's that initiating a conversation on both sides. As an employer should be saying, what do you need from me to support you? And the employee has to feel comfortable having the conversation. It comes back to that culture of feeling included. Not just I was brought in to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm part of a team. And there may be ways to balance some of this that I haven't thought about. Can we brainstorm about it? Because it may be that you can support someone, you could help me do this piece, and I can help you take this off your plate, and we switch a little bit during this time period, right?
I think it behooves any company to have that conversation, because it is so expensive to hire a new person. When you have an experienced person that already knows the ins and outs of everything, why train somebody new? It is so hard. But I have worked for such rigid companies in the past. They're going to lose fantastic people if their philosophies don't change. I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, I think it happens. I mean, you can see where there's churn, right? And you can see where there's stability, and there's different reasons for churn. You're an example of someone that left because your husband was transferred. That's a reasonable for churn. And sometimes in small companies, as much as you want to promote. So Erica left because she needed full-time doing accounting. I didn't have the work. It just didn't exist for me. I couldn't fabricate it. She knew a tremendous about our business, and there wasn't enough other things that she was interested in to have her full time. So, so people will leave for those reasons. And I think those are reasonable reasons. But I think the more that we as employers look at how are we investing in people, how are we also helping them find what they like? And so that they're focusing and enjoying what they're doing, instead of, well, I like this piece, but I don't like these 5 pieces. And I like this. I think that's where the part-time really benefits a company, is having that person that loves doing graphic design, but you only need graphic design 15 to 20 or 30 hours a week, right? Or you're a smaller company and you don't need a full-time accounts payable and receivable person, because it's not how your business works. I think you do that and you structure it and get the person that really likes it and can grow with it, and they're going to outgrow your boss, right? Because they're good at it and they're going to know more about it. That's awesome.
Yes,
It,
it is awesome. And
so,
I like too often in the small businesses that I work with, that they want to find one magic person that knows literally everything and
mhm,
is good at literally everything. They don't exist. They just
nope.
don't. If they are good at a lot of things, something does suffer because they're spread way too thin. If you, the owner, can't do everything, that one assistant or that one office worker can't do everything too in house. So I
And
see that a lot.
And I think the thing is they don't figure out what they're good at. And I think that's where, that communication too, and how you structure what the person's doing. And, to me, also, if you're going to hire someone, there's a lot of conversation about results only work environment. But I actually think that sometimes tracking your time is really valuable.
Mhm.
Because if I'm hiring someone to do my accounting and I haven't a clue what it could take for time, because I've never bothered to track it, or graphic design, I may be hiring someone for way more than they can handle for the number of hours we've agreed to, or I don't have enough work to keep them busy. They're doing it in 3 hours and I've hired them for 20 and there's nothing else. So I think that's the other thing that an employer really needs to be aware of is, how do you structure that job for success, and understand what, you don't want someone that's been brought in for 20 hours a week and they're going home really unhappy because they never feel like they've finished anything.
Yes.
And the boss isn't happy because they don't feel like they've finished anything. But basically, it's not because the person's incompetent. It's because it hasn't been structured in such a way that they're going to finish. Like, there was never, to your point, the person is being asked to do the jack of all trades. You're never going to finish everything.
I love that you teach part-time employees how to take initiative, be brave enough to take initiative. What if you have some boss that kind of flies off the handle? What kind of resources can I go to? And there's a place for that now, whereas in the past, there's nothing. You're all alone.
Exactly. And I think that whether it's the boss that flies off the handle or the person, again, it's like, as a boss, sometimes we forget we might be the problem,
Mhm.
right? We didn't explain a project properly. So if I think this should take a half an hour and it takes you 4 hours, there's a disconnect here. So what
Mhm.
did you think I wanted you to do?
Right.
And I have to learn your language, right? To make sure that you understand, because I can, I've said this to my team before, just because I've explained it doesn't mean you understand it. Or I have people take notes when they're learning things from me personally, and I'm a big proponent on that. And I'm like, as long as you have your notes out the next time you go to do that project, you can ask any question you want. If your notes aren't out, I'm not going to be very happy with you. Because I understand that you go back to something that's similar and you've missed something in the steps. It made sense when you did it. It's been 3 weeks, probably the first time you teach people how to do certain things. And then they
Mhm.
go back and they're like, oh, wait a minute, how did I get into this? Or how? But if you have notes and you say, oh, I missed writing down that step, or, oh, that's what that means.
Yes.
And again,
Yes.
it's communication, right? I think the other thing is, it's easy as a manager or someone that's done it for a long time to get that warped sense. There's things that I can still do really fast.
Mhm.
And I have to always slow down and go, of course they can't do it like this.
Mhm.
It's new. And that's true so if you bring someone in part-time, it's having that patience to get them up to speed and
Mhm.
know that because they're part-time, that growth pattern is going to take longer,
Mhm.
because they might be in it only 4 hours. And so their onboarding is a longer period, so we want people to learn to be patient. So that's where we're headed and what we're working towards. So,
And something that popped into my mind that we as business owners need to remember, part-time does not mean short-time.
yep.
You can have a long-term employee that's part-time and they just kind of grow and evolve with you. What do you know now in your business and growing TAPP that you wish you knew earlier?
Actually, more about how I describe TAPP and the marketing and branding. I mean, you and I both have worked with Mike Kim,
Mhm.
and really realizing that we internally seem to come up with what we want to say, but we're not actually telling a story. We're not drawing people into a story. When we first started, I feel like we did all the classic things that now I look back and I'm like, oh, he would have been using me as an example on all of this. And I think that that's what I'm growing with more, is figuring out that outreach and that story that says, you're saying, hey, it's resonating with me. Like telling a story that resonates with people rather than, oh, I don't quite understand what this is all about. And so that's what a lot of what I've been learning. And then we've just done so much research on our side to create these courses and to put the information together and to learn about different companies and industries. And, not that just that part-time's across the board, but understanding that it's different if you're in retail than it is if you're in an office environment. And they're going to need some different things as we go through it. I love to learn, so it's a lot of fun. And I think every day come in from a podcast and say, okay, so I learned this. Like, what can I do with it? What can I do with this? And whether it applies to TAPP or Guild Associates, and I've also learned some of the things I probably haven't been as good as a boss on. So I don't want that evaluation scorecard on myself either right now. But
well, I think we evolve as being leaders and business owners and everything like that. I am super excited that TAPP is in existence because there's so many resources that you develop in a wonderful community to have such a powerful workforce. When you can really be happy and comfortable and provide value to your employer, and then you have happy employees, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
And you're retaining that knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the people that might have taken a step back and not done anything, now they're part of the knowledge workforce, regardless of where you end up deciding to work. It's amazing. I mean, whether you're a mom or you're retired or somewhere in between, you have something to give and a perspective to give. I think the new ideas that come into a workforce is for that person that steps away during the week that comes back with a fresh perspective. It's awesome.
Say again what TAPP stands for.
Talented Alliance of Part-Time Professionals.
Awesome. Now, share your favorite resource or book that's really, really made a difference for you professionally.
The resource for me is actually my professional association, which is ASAE and the Center for Leadership. And ASAE used to stand for the American Society of Association Executives. And they have a listserv with association executives from across the world. And it's one of the easiest ways that I kind of can keep my pulse on what's going on in the association world, whether it's a very small association of, a part-time person or even volunteers, all the way up to IEEE, which I think is 1,000 people on staff and 480,000 members. I've attended their meetings, so I've gotten a lot of resources from that. We've been reading a lot of their magazines, and it's amazing how cyclical the world is. I think that's my constant in resource. In terms of books, I probably could give you a different book every couple of months.
Understand that. But that listserv has got to be super important in what you do. It's your lifeline almost.
Yeah, it is, and especially since we're in the Boston area, there's not as many of the associations as you would find in Chicago and Washington, D.C., where there's a lot of lobbying that takes place. So it's that connection, and you can sit and just read. And then if I have a question, I'll post a question. Or sometimes, for example, I might make a connection. So I saw someone posted and said, hey, I'm looking for a speaker on someone that can work on leadership with my teams. And I thought of a friend of ours and sent her, hey, is this something that's of interest to you? So you can benefit someone else. And it's just fun to see what people are doing in different perspectives from across the country. I've learned a lot from them.
Cool.
And I'm a certified association exec, so I also have to get my continuing education credits.
Good deal. Well, how do people connect with you?
Okay, so I am on LinkedIn, as is TAPP. So I think I gave you all the links for TAPP. Instagram, we post pretty regularly, everything with quotes to tips. We're at TAPP, TAPPONLI. We're on Facebook at TAPP Online.
Awesome.
And our website is tapponline.net.
Well, I'll have all of those links in the show notes. So listeners, scroll down in your favorite podcast player and you'll see all those links. And be sure to connect with Linda and TAPP. I will encourage everybody to go through the communications mini course. It's awesome.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed it. So thanks, Linda, for
Thank you.
being with me today.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Gayla.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. What was your biggest takeaway from the conversation with Linda? It all boils down to becoming better communicators, doesn't it? That's at least my takeaway. I think it's great that TAPP is a fantastic resource for individuals to become more marketable, a more marketable resource as a part-time employee. And taking that initiative to make sure that all involved are informed about various tasks that you may be doing. That communication, taking that initiative as the part-time employee or the part-time resource. But then flipping it over, it's like, how can the company create a culture that really has part-time employee, the part-time professional, to thrive? Hop over to Instagram and send me a private message and let me know what your biggest takeaway was about the episode. And hey, what would be really, really cool if you'd take a screenshot of the episode and share it on Instagram, and be sure to tag me and TAPP. All of Linda's contact information and resources are in the show notes. I highly recommend the free online course on communication that Linda mentioned in the episode. And it's a great first step to open up the communication paths. That online course, that link is also in the show notes. So thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, have a fantastic week.